Emme Christos Jesus benchois.
Orange Shabbat Mutan Tatmir, was not even native note of you, the Vespers open, not the answer there is Christos. Jeffrey's Capadinigun, ever voice in Aaron, a very hero, ship the name of the Asiron. FT to the end of the chariot, I own on science of one more in Tiro, a post in the very Aaron. And by to a fine, and not Aaron tape and on. Never in the venture, people to crowd or choice, Penoti. If name choice, if no TP Pantocrator, if you tempen choice, open notions with your resource by Christus, we thank you for every condition concerning every condition, and in every condition for you have covered us, helped us, guarded us, accepted us to you, spared us, supported us, and has brought us to this hour. Lord, have mercy. Therefore we ask and treat your goodness all around mankind, grant us to complete this holy day, and all the days of all life and all peace with your fear. All envy, all temptation, the work of Satan, the counsel of the wicked people, the rising of enemies and manifesting them away from us, and from all your people, and from this church, and from this holy place that is yours. But those things which are good and profitable, do provide for us, for it is you have given us the authority to tread and serpent and scorpion upon all the power of the enemy. ولا تدخلنا في
Arshi Angelo Shere Gabriel Pisok Tendefai Shinofi
Shereni Serobim Shereni Serafim
Shereyo Annes Pinesheno Herbero Odromo Sherepio Even Segenis and Emmanuel
Serena soy Señor tiena apóstolos en matiti sente pensoi si sos bello
Serena copi martiros Serepi evangel Si Serepi apostolos Ava Marcos Piteoremos
Sereno teno oni martiros Sereni soy genge Eneo Sereni atloforos Pesoi sepora gargios Theodoros Pesetrat illegi Philopatir Mercurius Avamina Enteni
Oini achen umetni Veniot Oabim Moshe Yamshi Sabat Nesjas Beapostolikos Bimenrit Entebech Christos
Itenet Lezem
Maria, Joy Sari Emon Mariko Emon Eten Novi Eterno Seros Vatos Nemen Maito Geaton Gasoti Emon
Again, let's ask God, the Pantocrator, the Father of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, we ask and treat your goodness all over mankind. Remember, O Lord, the souls of your servants who have fallen asleep, our fathers and our brethren.
Pray for our fathers and brethren who have fallen asleep and repose in the faith of Christ since the beginning. Our holy fathers, the archbishops, our fathers, the bishops, our fathers, the hegumens, our fathers, the priests, our brethren, the deacons, our fathers, the monks, and our fathers, the laymen. And for the full repose of Christians, that Christ our God may repose all their souls in the paradise of joy. And we too accord mercy unto us, and forgive us our sins.
Lord have mercy.
Graciously, O Lord, repose all their souls in the bosom of our holy fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Sustain them in a green pasture beside all waters in the paradise of rest, the place out of which grief, sorrow, and groaning have fled away in the light of your saints. Raise up their bodies also on the day which you have appointed according to your promises, which are without lie. Grant them the good things of your promises, that which an eye has not seen nor ear heard, neither have come upon the heart of man, the things which you, God, have prepared for to those who love your holy name. For there is no death for your servants but a departure, even if any negligence or heedlessness has overtaken them as men, since they were clothed in flesh and dwelt in this world. O God, as a good and lover of mankind, graciously accord the Lord to repose, and forgive your servants from the sunrise to sunset, and from east to west, each one according to his name, and each one according to her name. For there is no one pure and without blemish, even though his life on earth is a single day. As for those, O Lord, whose souls you have taken, repose them, and may they be worthy of the kingdom of the heavens. As for us all, grant us our Christian perfection, that we be pleasing to you, and give them and us a share inheritance with all your saints.
Lord have mercy.
Gracious therefore, O Lord, to give us a
Blessed are you, O Lord, our Father, succeed, blessed, glorify you, Amen. Let your mercy, O Lord, be upon us according to your hope in you. For the eyes of everyone wait upon you, for you give them food for the season. Hear us, O God, our Savior, the hope of all the nations of the earth. And you, O Lord, keep us safe from this generation forever. Blessed are you, O Lord, teach me your statutes. Blessed are you, O Lord, make me know your commandments. Blessed are you, O Lord, enlighten me with righteousness. Your mercy, O Lord, endures forever. Despise not, O Lord, the works of your hands. You have been my refuge from generation to generation. I ask the Lord and say, have mercy on me. Forgive my soul, for I sinned against you. Lord, I have fled unto you. Save me, take me to your will. For you are my God, and you is the fountain of life. In your light shall we see light. Let your mercy come on those who know you, and your righteousness the upright heart. To you belongs blessing, to you belongs praise, to you belongs glory. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, who is from the beginning, now and forever. Amen. It is good to give thanks to the Lord and to sing praise unto your name, most high. Show forth your mercy every morning, and your righteousness. Amen. Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, born of Virgin Mary, have mercy. Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, crucified for us, have mercy on us. Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, Holy Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, now and forever, to age of all ages. Amen. Holy Trinity, have mercy on us. Holy Trinity, have mercy on us. Holy Trinity, have mercy on us. Lord, forgive us our sins. Lord, forgive us our iniquities. Lord, forgive us our trespasses. Lord, visit us sick of your people. Show us the sick of your holy name. Our fathers and brethren who fallen asleep, Lord, repose your souls. We are without sin, Lord, have mercy on us. We are without sin, Lord, help us and receive our supplication. For yours the glory, divinity, and triple holiness, Lord, have mercy, Lord, have mercy on us. Christos Isos ben Trasamina Leloya Sherene Titi Oeros Webet me noit no person in eventimas notus novem be Christos Tene prosef shir joy happy shir can novina nevo Mati oem shoiseri gont funanim sishtif can novina nevo
Te parthenos Maria,
Aris ben Tarik for boste for emotnani kementene novi Sherene oti vartenos ti oro emmin ali ethini Oti eberostati setenot nanem men choices bechristos in the canem novi nanevo eripsol serem Maria and if you owe it choice owina min bismin ritis kohem oferiego God has said in the book of Psalms, the queen stood at your right hand, O King. Solomon motieros en pigo en tenigo, jetasoni owota espirita polis in Jerusalem. For he has given us a belover in many hidings, saying, come out of your garden, O choicest aroma. Sherene oti parthenos oro en mi en alitini. Sheref shoshon teben genos ariegfonan en menui. We ask you to remember us, O our faithful advocate, before our Lord Jesus Christ, that he may forgive us our sins. Shashvin arshi angelos se oira doverehnos, ebem thompi bantograto, evshem shem mysterionet hi. Michael bebi owe, Gabriel bebi isna. Raphael bebi hashon katati posentetreyes. Sori el sadaki el sarati el nemanani el nainishtin rekroinitu. Nitobem moferijin bison. Nisherobim ni serafim ni edronos ni mechoisinigom bifto etzon nasomatos tetfire tapirama enteo. Bigudeftu emeberes viteros eti eklese teni shorbim mise bohose kenobetat munkev oshe volev gohem moshe agios azotheos ni etshoni matalon shou agios esheros ni etaven kodems matam no agios athanatos esmoe tekeglino nameya marebek nainem tekhirini oen soptem beklaos choices about it venem kaime volchen pek onem pektayo afshan gosem bielo ya sharinani fi owi oemmo jeage yosamina lelo ya bi o fa ben notibe alebres babinare con strati angeli con nemni tamane porani otifkan novina nebo Athanasius the Apostle, the teacher of the church, who became champion because of his orthodoxy. For he became a lamp illuminating the entire world when he defeated Arius, purging his darkness. And he taught us that the Lord was consubstantial with the Father, whole in his divinity, with one nature. He fought the pagans and the heretics, drew them to the faith, fortified his people in the faith. The Holy Spirit taught his life and struggle, and became against the world, for he was with Christ. He who like the apostles, great among the patriarchs, who established monasticism in the dark west. He also established the church of Ethiopia and sent to them for Salama, who is the preacher of light. Praise to the Lord on our behalf, O great patriarch of Athanasius the Apostolic, that he may forgive us our sins. Shopienso edison segon chenima echosi et archen chetot echosi neftirenti theotokos sitoyem parthenos en seioniven. Ask of him whom you have borne, our good Savior, to take away Stioro emmi ralithini, Sheret Shoshon Tepengeros, Ephonam and Emmanuel. We ask you to remember us, O our faithful advocate, before our Lord Jesus Christ, that he may forgive us our sins.
Be exalted, O Lord, lift thy name, glorify your grace, and stand to the cross, you brought forth and save the whole world. He came and saved our souls. Glory be to our Master, King Christ, and by the apostles.
Truly we believe in one God, God the Father, created heaven and earth, all things seen and unseen. We believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only God, Son of God, my God, Father, forever and ages. Light of light, true God, begotten, not created. Father, by whom all things were made. But for us, man of salvation, came down from heaven, was incarnate, rose, great and virgin, man, became man. And was crucified for us under Pontius Pilate, suffered and buried, and stayed there, rose from the dead, according to our scriptures. Descended to heaven, sits at the right hand of his Father. He is coming again, his glory, judge the living and dead. His kingdom shall be known. Yes, we believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, giver of life. Five prophets and one holy Catholic Apostolic Church.
Sotem Erun. Esmo Erun, Eri Voithen Erun. Oleam pe conte volarun gem pencine hem pe cogai cane noveno nivol. Lille flogison. Erini pasi. Master Lord Jesus Christ, our Son, who said to saints, your disciples and holy apostles, many prophets and righteous men have desired to see the thing which you see and have not seen them, and to hear the thing which you have not heard them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, your ears, for they hear. May we be worthy to hear and act according to your holy gospel through the prayers of your saints. Remember also our Master, those who have been us to remember them in our supplication prayers, which we offer up unto you, Lord our God, those who have already fortunately reposed them, those who are sick, heal them, for you are the life of us all, salvation of us all, the hope of us all, the healings of us all, and the resurrection of us all.
Stosite metavo vodeo, accostamento agio, oh, evangelio.
Evangelion, to anagnos madoxasi.
God, to hear the holy gospel, the gospel according to St. Matthew. May his blessings be with us all. Amen. Psalm of David the prophet and the king, may his blessings be with us all. Amen. I will give you thanks with uprightness of heart when I have learned the judgments of your righteousness. I will keep your ordinances. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, our Lord, God and Savior and King of us all, Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, to whom is due glory forever and ever. Amen. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on a mountain by himself to pray. And when evening had come, he was alone there, but the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid." And Peter answered him and said, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." So he said, "Come." And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked out of the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sing, he cried out, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." When they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret, and when the men of that place recognized him, they sent out into all the surrounding region, brought him all who were sick, and begged him that they might only touch the hem of his garment. And as many as touched it were made perfectly well.
Glory be to God forever. Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
Taskifala simontu kirio eklenate. Proschomente umetafofu. Amin.
O Master Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son, and Logos of God the Father, who has broken every bond of our sins through his saving, life-giving sufferings, who breathed into the face of his saintly disciples and holy apostles and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit if you forgive the sins of any. They are forgiven. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained. Now also, our Master, you have given grace through your holy apostles to those who for a time labor in the priesthood in your holy church to forgive sin upon the earth and to bind and to loose every bond of iniquity. Now also we ask and entreat your goodness, O Lord of mankind, for your servants, my father and my brethren, and my weakness, those who bow their heads before your holy glory, dispense unto us your mercy, and lose every bond of our sins. And if we have committed any sin against you knowingly or unknowingly, or through anguish of heart, whether in deed or word or from faint-heartedness, O Master, who knows the weakness of men, as the good one and lover of mankind, O God, grant us the forgiveness of our sins, bless us, purify us, absolve us, and absolve all your people. Fill us with your fear, straighten us for your holy goodwill, for you are our God, and the glory, honor, dominion, and the worship are due to you with your good Father and the Holy Spirit, the giver of life, with one essence with you, now at all times and to the age of all ages. Amen. Lord Jesus Christ, the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you. Depart in peace. May the peace of the Lord be with you all. Amen.
Okay, we're very happy to have with us today Mr. Ron Morris. He's a educator. He's been in education for 26 years. After his teaching career, he decided that he wants to help teachers and parents how to discipline children, how to parent kids, how to teach kids. So he's been doing a lot of workshops and a lot of presentations in schools, and we were very happy to be able to have him with us today. So he will be talking to us today about adolescence and how to communicate with our teenagers. So we'll just have him come up front. We'll just first start with one song till we have Mr. Ron Morris join us in the front.
وهنا نفس مشكلة المرة اللي فاتت. حافظين ترنيمة يا اللي مت بدالي؟ مين حافظها؟ اكيد كلكم عارفينها، فيا ريت تقولوا معايا عشان الساوند برضو مش شغال زي المره اللي فاتت. اوكي. يلي مت بدالي وشايل كل أحمالي في السما بتشفع فيا. عمري ضاع واشتريته قلبي تاه ولقيته وفتحت لعينيا. يلي مت بدالي وشايل كل أحمالي في السما بتشفع فيا. عمري ضاع واشتريته وقلبي تاه ولقيت الصوت مش ماشي. سوري معلش ابونا حساها سريعه زياده. معرفش في حاجه غلط في الساوند. معلش سوري. يا ريت نقول مع بعض. يلي مت بدالي وشايل كل أحمالي في السما بتشفع فيا. عمري ضاع واشتريته، قلبي تاه ولقيته وفتحت العينيا. يلي مت بدالي وشايل كل أحمالي في السما تشفع فيا. عمري ضاع ولقيت، قلبي تاه ولقيته وفتحت العينيا. يا إلهي أنا قلبي يسجد ليك، يا إلهي أنا قلبي يخضع ليك، يا حمل مذبوح عني. يا إلهي أنا قلبي يسجد ليك، يا إلهي أنا قلبي يخضع ليك، يا حمل مذبوح عني. ليك المجد والكرامة والبهاء، ليك علامة سلطانك بيحررني. ليك القوة والجلال، من البشر أبرع جمال، نعمتك بتغيرني. ليك المجد والكرامة والبهاء، ليك علامة سلطانك بيحررني. ليك القوة والجلال، من البشر أبرع جمال، نعمتك بتغيرني. يا إلهي أنا قلبي يسجد ليك، يا إلهي أنا قلبي يخضع ليك، يا حمل مذبوح عني. يا إلهي أنا قلبي يسجد ليك، يا إلهي أنا قلبي يخضع ليك، يا حمل مذبوح عني.
Okay, so again, one more time, we're very happy to have Mr. Ron Morrish with us today. We were very happy that he accepted our invitation. We had him about a year ago where he was with us as well. This is the second time that he comes and talks to our meeting. Among the books that he has written 3 books. The first book, it's called Secrets of Discipline. The second one's called With All Due Respect, and the third one, it's called Flip Tips. And he's graciously have brought us a few of his books that are going to be for sale outside. And Mr. Ron Morrish will accept questions at the end, and he's also will be happy to stay after we're all done. If you have any more questions that you would want to ask him, one-on-one questions, he'll also be happy to be in the front here, and you can come up and introduce yourself, and you can ask him your questions. So without further ado, we're very happy to have you here with us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Now, am I supposed to be turning some unit on here, or me in technology? Told to press the red button or something. Okay, I hope. And I guess I probably do need this. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. I got here about an hour ahead of time and sat at the back and sat through a service that was very, very interesting. Learn something every day. I'm from Fonthill, Ontario, down by Welland, 15 minutes from Niagara Falls, in case you have no idea where Fonthill is. 15 minutes from Niagara Falls. Career as a teacher, but I'm also a parent of 4 children and now a grandparent of 5, which is very, very exciting. I have 3 boys and a girl, and then 3 grandsons and 2 granddaughters. And for many years now, I have gone around and spoken to people about discipline for children and about raising responsible children. And it's very important that you understand what I mean by that word, because there's two roads that you can go down. There's two belief systems regarding discipline. And everything that I suggest to you, you have to choose which of those belief systems, you have to choose what discipline means to you, or nothing I say will work for you. And before we start talking about adolescent children, which is what I'm here to talk about tonight for a few minutes, there are people who believe that discipline means punishment. And they argue if there was no punishment, then there was no discipline. Like if the child did something wrong and he wasn't punished for it, they'll argue there was no discipline. There's another form of discipline. That discipline, by the way, the meaning is you are in trouble for doing things the wrong way. So in the school system, for instance, going to the principal's office for discipline means you're in trouble for doing things the wrong way. And they use penalties like detention, taking away your privileges, and things like that. To remember where we're standing tonight, there is another definition of discipline from which we get the word disciple and discipleship. That discipline means you're in training for doing things the right way, not in trouble for doing things the wrong way, in training for doing things the right way. That's why becoming a doctor is called a discipline, or becoming a champion skier for the Olympics. It's a discipline, and your success comes from the training in doing things the right way. The form of discipline that is educational, from which we get the word disciple, that's the form I recommend to you. And I'm going to tell you, including with whether it be young children or adolescent children, it changes everything. And it would take me the next hour to explain all the differences. I'll give you one example. If you use a timeout for a child, let's say you send him to his room for a timeout, you can make it a punishment, and he goes for an hour, and then he comes back when he finishes the punishment for doing things the wrong way. Or you can give that timeout a purpose, where you say, go to your room to calm down. Come back when you're ready to do things the right way. So he can come back when he finishes a penalty for doing things the wrong way, or he can come back when he's ready to do things the right way. The ready to do things the right way, which is discipleship, and disciple as a word, and discipline, that's what I recommend to you. We could spend a day together. I can take every technique you use in discipline, I can give it either a punishment or a purpose. Either a punishment as part of being in trouble, or purpose as part of his training for doing things the right way. I can do it with every technique in discipline. It's actually one of the most interesting things about discipline, and you really have to choose. It's the difference between how the school system worked and how your favorite teacher worked. It's why they were so different. And what I recommend to people as a very quick way of seeing things, as a parent, don't try to be like the police officer giving out penalties for every time they do things the wrong way. Try to be the driving instructor, not the police officer. The driving instructor doing the training in how to do things the right way. It's a different voice that you'll use. And all of your techniques will change if you're doing the training for success, not the punishment for failure. They both have their place, but you'll have a style and an approach. When we're talking about adolescence, and by the way, just so you know the impact of this, there was a school in Ottawa, Pinecrest School in Ottawa, where this was about 7 years ago now. They gave out as punishment 520 suspensions from school in 1 year, which was amazing because they only had 380 students in the school and gave out 520 suspensions. And then they got a new principal who convinced the teachers to take the time to teach every child how to behave properly when he came to school, and to increase things like supervision, and to get the children turned around and back on track, and teach them to solve problems, not just suffer for problems, solve problems. And after 3 years of doing it, they had 3 suspensions from school, down from 520. I got to tell you, folks, very powerful. Very powerful for adolescent children as well. So, let's talk about adolescence. Interesting time of life. National Geographic did a fascinating article in which they said, for all of you who have adolescents and who have to deal with their attitude as they get older, would you remember that the attitude they get is part of why the human race is so successful? That historically, children left home and started their own life around the age of 14 or 15, sometimes even younger. And in order to leave the nest, like baby birds have to, nature brought into adolescence a bit of an attitude in which around the age of 14, they would think they knew everything and didn't want to be told anything anymore. And they don't want you directing them anymore. And not only do they know everything, but when it comes to some of the nasty things that happen out there in life, it won't happen to them. That they get this sense of being invulnerable, and they can do all these things, and they'll be fine. Thank you very much. Those two attitudes together allowed children to think they were capable around 14 or 15 years of age of leaving home and not moving next door, but actually moving to the other side of the mountain where some farmers were being unfortunately eaten by lions or whatever. But hey, it'll never happen to me. I'm going to move over there and have my own place. That was part of humanity being so successful and moving and spreading out across the world. And those attitudes came in adolescence. They are still there. The problem is now we keep them home way beyond 13, 14, 15 years of age. We'll keep them home until they're 21, 22, and then they finally move out, and then they come back, unfortunately. Sometimes with a lot of problems. But this article said, remember when you see the attitude, that was when they started to leave home. And now we keep them home and have to deal with it. So it's just a little bit different. Adolescence, and we all went through it, is a time of great uncertainty and self-doubt. You're no longer a little child being protected by your parents, but neither are you an adult in charge of your own life. You're in between the protection of childhood and the independence of adulthood. And you don't have control of your life yet. It's a time of life when you wake up every morning uncertain about whether you will ever be smart enough, thin enough, attractive enough, successful enough, or anything else enough in your life. And it's just full of self-doubt. You worry about being embarrassed in front of your friends. And many adults who would like to be younger wouldn't like to be that much younger, because this was not a very comfortable time in life. It's a time when you switch your allegiance from being loyal to and wanting to please adults to now wanting to please people your own age, because those are the people you're now going to be socializing with and working with as you get out into the workforce. And we all did that, from switching from dealing with our parents' generation to dealing with our own generation. And it's during that time period These days, you will find that social networking is huge and dominates a major part of their life. Please remember, because we were talking about it, and I actually heard it being discussed in the junior high meeting as I walked by it, about adolescents being on their cell phones all the time and so on. So are a lot of adults. All you have to do is watch the House of Commons, and you'll see them all on their phones all the time. Like, it's not just children. We'd like to pretend we're so different, but frankly, I have friends whose cell phones are on their bedside table, and if a message comes in, the ding goes off, and they wake up, and they look at the message and answer it, and then try to go back to sleep. And it's not just children who are doing that. So for girls, especially, being unfriended in social networking is a huge deal. And so all of the social networking that goes on with children, sort of a whole new world. It used to be that we met in groups and walked to school together and did a lot of the social networking that way. This new use of technology is an interesting change. Cyberbullying, and I don't want to get into that, but cyberbullying is a big deal in itself. Mostly girls bullying over the internet. Boys tend to use their time on the internet a lot more for playing games as opposed to getting into some of the the nasty social kinds of commentary and so on. So those are the kinds of issues we have to deal with. Let me talk about adolescents in terms of the changes that they go through. One of the quick ones, by the way, that you will see, because I want to talk about their brain for a couple of minutes. With adolescents, the hormones of adolescents that change their bodies also change the quality of their sleep. My wife went through that too, by the way. It was something she called menopause that she mistakenly claimed men go through too, but men don't have issues. But there were nights. There was an ad on TV that I'm sure some of you have seen, where this lady comes out of her house in the middle of winter with the windows wide open and takes the cover off the air conditioning. My wife understood that. I'm just going to say that. There were nights when she was too hot, too cold, too restless, couldn't sleep, got up, tried to sleep someplace else. That didn't work either. In the morning, I learned to stay away from her for about an hour, because that's what happens when people have a very bad night's sleep. And I remember one morning when I tried to talk to her as she came out, and it was a mistake. And she just looked at me and went, "Just because I'm moving doesn't mean I'm awake." Well, I translated that, by the way, into just because she's moving doesn't mean she's human. However, I didn't say that to her. That would have been unwise. That's just the way I felt. Your adolescents go through the same hormonal changes that affect their sleep. And what you will find in the morning is a very noticeable gap develops between when they get up and when they wake up. As much as an hour or more between when they get up and when they wake up. In between those two times, they can do what we call procedural things that come from the part of the brain back here that doesn't require thinking. They can get dressed. In some cases, they love school uniforms. They hate them until they realize they don't have to worry about what to wear to school in the morning, because they're not awake and they don't have to think about it, and they just slip on the same thing they put on yesterday, which is procedural. And they actually learn to like that. They can get themselves fed, although I have to tell you, there are many people, including people in this room here, who don't like to eat until they're fully awake because it makes them nauseous. And you will find that in many adolescents, especially with acidic things like fruit juices and so on. They don't want to put them on their stomach until they're fully awake. And I know their parents, oh, you have to eat something before you go to school, but they're not with you yet. They're not awake yet. And that's a real issue. One of the things we deal with always with adolescents is if they take a lunch to school, they'll often eat it on the way there once they wake up because they treat it like it's their breakfast. So be ready for those issues in the morning with their very poor sleep. Now, what the adolescent brain goes through is fascinating. What happens is when children are young, their brain lacks a protein called myelin. Now, myelin is easy to understand. If you go to the hardware store to buy wiring, electrical wiring for your house, you will buy it with a coating on it. That coating is very important. It eliminates short circuits, and it makes the electricity go much faster from its source to its destination. That's what it does in your brain. And it allows your brain to work very quickly and very efficiently as an adult. The problem is, it also makes it far more difficult for the brain to make new connections. And it doesn't grow very quickly. So in a young child, their brain lacks that protein. It'll be put on somewhere towards the end of adolescence. So the brain of a young child, without that coating, grows and connects everything. It grows at an astonishing rate, and it connects everything to everything. Around the age of 9 or 10, it's going to sort this out as to what it actually needs. And so the brain just keeps growing and growing and growing, and around the age of 9 or 10, it actually becomes over-connected and starts to bog down. And this is where you'll find yourself having to remind them more. You might stand there and go, hello, how many times do I have to say this to you? And it's just losing its effectiveness here and its efficiency. And you might find that they want louder music and gentle things, gentle music. Gentle commands from you don't seem to sink in very well. It has to be louder to get through this mess that's now in their brain. Around that time, the brain starts to fix this problem. And what it does is it takes part of itself offline, prunes it of extra connections that it won't need, and neural networks that it won't need, reorganizes everything, and makes it work far more effectively. If you started to use computers way back when I did, before they had a lot of memory to them, many of you will remember that we had to sit down for a few hours and remove unused icons and programs from the computer, and then do what's called a defrag. Defragging your computer is where in its memory it would have all sorts of empty spaces and unused things, and it would get blockages and issues. And you would have to tell it to spend the night, the whole night, reorganizing itself. That's what's happening in the child's brain, and it takes a while. So it starts back here where habits and routines are stored. And some of the routines that you have with your children, where they do certain things the same way all the time, you'll suddenly see those be unavailable to you. And you'll be, you've always done it this way. But that you've always done it that way will suddenly have been disconnected so it can be cleaned up. And later on, that comes back, by the way, but it comes back pruned. The corpus callosum in the brain is the part that joins the two halves of the brain, the two hemispheres. It loses over 1/3 of its thickness through pruning. So what you have to remember in dealing with adolescents is while their brain is being pruned and all these pieces are being snipped out, be prepared to deal with millions upon millions of dead ends, where thanks to the pruning, you give them information doesn't get to where it needs to be. They've got information and can't find it. They can find it, but they just can't figure out how to get it back out. And they keep getting stuck in this process. And you're going to have to be patient and give them more reminders. And I recommend you teach them at this stage how to be list makers, where if their brain won't remember things very well, making a list is something adults use to get around that problem. And I talk about positive discipline. We were talking about an adolescent recently in a school who kept forgetting what to bring to school in the morning. Not a surprise. And what the school did was they gave him detentions. I said, why would you give him detentions? Why wouldn't you have him stay for a few minutes and make a list of what he has to take to school in the morning? And make 3 copies and take them home and put them up in his, like the washroom and the kitchen and the front door, and then bring you back, take pictures with a cell phone and bring back and go, there you go. I put them exactly where we decided, this and this and this, there you go. Well, good, I hope it works. Like, why would you give them the punishment for doing it the wrong way instead of teaching them skills for doing it the right way? Why would you do that? Like, it's a whole sense of what we're all about. Why would you just punish him for doing it the wrong way instead of taking the time to teach him how to do it the right way? But that's the way a lot of people operate. It's very interesting that they just keep thinking about the punishments. So, then, as the brain keeps being reworked, it gets to the emotional brain here, and what you're going to see, some adolescents go into an absolutely flat emotion and you can't get them excited about anything. Others go into a jagged emotion. They get happy for no reason, sad for no reason, silly for no reason, and it's just their emotions are all over the place. But your real problem comes when this change in adolescence gets right here. This is the thinking brain, and this controls your life. It lets you organize yourself, control yourself. It lets you figure out what other people are doing and why, and how to respond appropriately to what other people are doing. It allows you to solve problems, to prevent problems by anticipating things. And it gives you good judgment and allows you to use good judgment in making decisions. When that part of the brain is unavailable, relatively unavailable, then the children need your guidance. And you need to change your way of doing things. Because what happens is adolescents rely more on the emotional brain. And when this is unavailable, this does things, for instance, like goal setting and waiting for rewards, like waiting into the future for something to happen. When this is offline, what you will notice is they want things right now. And so that very immediate gratification and emotional things take over. Because it's the frontal part of the brain, the thinking brain, that figures out what people are doing and how to respond, the emotional brain keeps making mistakes. It misunderstands what people are doing, and it keeps misresponding. So here you go, folks, when you're talking to your adolescent children. Advice, parents give advice, that concept is right here. When this is under reconstruction and the emotional brain reacts, the emotional brain interprets all advice as criticism. And you will hear your children complain that you're always telling them what they did wrong, that you're always criticizing them. And I can hear, no, I'm trying to help you. No, you're not. You are always telling me what I did wrong. That's the emotional brain misunderstanding what parents are trying to do to help their children. And you'll keep getting those kinds of emotional responses. So one of the big things in communicating with children, besides being careful about the morning, is drain the emotions if you want them to solve problems. If you want problem solving, if you want them to talk to you and work this material, you have to take the emotional brain out of the equation because it overwhelms the thinking brain, which isn't very effective at the time. So I'll talk to you in an hour. Like let's just calm down. I'll talk to you in an hour. Works way better than getting into it when you're both emotional and upset by something. When you do talk to them, I recommend you avoid getting into what's called a face-off, where you get into an argument face-to-face. You can actually do that with a 7-year-old. You can say to them, you look at me while I'm talking to you. And they will interpret that one of two ways. If you're a punitive person, they will unfortunately say, oh, I'm in trouble for something. If you are about discipline of discipleship, they'll go, uh-oh, this must be serious. Which is a different interpretation of look at me when I'm speaking to you. Because everything works differently when you're about teaching children to behave properly instead of just punishing them for behaving badly. Everything works differently. But the adolescent brain thinks, I'm going to get a lecture, and it throws up a wall, and you'll feel like they're not hearing a word you say, like you're just talking to the wall. Or the alternative to the wall going up is they'll start to debate you. They will argue every word you're saying. And on both counts, I'm going to tell you, because the rule of thumb is nothing good ever comes from getting into a face-off with an adolescent. And in general, you can destroy an entire evening by getting into that with a child and exhaust yourself and accomplish nothing. What you will find is that if you drive your child someplace in the car for half an hour or so, you can talk about anything, because now you're not face-to-face. Now you're side by side. And I remember with my own children, my eldest son is now 42 years of age. We used to have the best discussions when we were washing and drying dishes. Because he was a child, he had more energy than I did as an adult. And so some people want their child to sit like they're an adult. But what happens is that extra energy starts to build up, and they start to get antsy, and then they're not listening much anymore. They want to do something else. If they're busy with something, if they're helping you with a job, any job, you can talk to them about anything. I used to have a behavioral class in the school system with 15 difficult behavior children. Aggressive, belligerent, rude. You know where we did our counseling? Moving school supplies. A lot of the time. We found some job. Sometimes we couldn't move any more school supplies. We'd go outside and weed the garden side by side, because school gardens always have weeds in them. We'd go outside and say, we've got to make this look a little bit better. It's disgusting. Side by side, taking out some weeds, we could talk about anything. But if I confronted them face to face, we'd be talking about nothing. And it's one of the most important things to learn when you're communicating, is to set it up. Don't hesitate. Remember, they're thinking of themselves as young adults, even from an earlier age. And on the handout that you've been given, one of the comments I make, the very last point, and it creates a communication gap. Our children grow up much quicker than we can handle. I mean, it's impossible. I have to tell you, folks, that 42-year-old son of mine, because I was a single parent, lost my wife, unfortunately, to cancer when they were young, but I was a single dad, and I remember when he was this big, and I was doing all the stuff, diapers, and now he's 42, like what happened? And that's how quickly it goes by. And what happens is we have real trouble accommodating that. So when we're talking about communicating with adolescents, one of the general rules is this. They believe they're about 3 years older than they really are and can handle everything. We talk to them as if they're about 3 years younger than they really are because they grow up so quickly. And there's a huge gap in between those two ages. So you have to sort of change the way you speak to them and talk to them straight across instead of down like a little child. And remember, adolescents respect adults who respect adolescents. It's a two-way street. And one of the ways you show respect is by talking to them in an age-appropriate way, but we actually have trouble doing that. So if you have a 13-year-old, you do understand he could be driving a car in 3 years. I mean, you almost have to give yourself a little kick on some of this stuff. That when you realize how close he is to some adult responsibilities and how this won't take very long. Then when you do sit down to talk to them, I know what adults do. And it's partly because we're so busy and we have so many things to do. We are always behind on our list of things to do. So what happens is we start to tell them what we wanted to say. But with adolescents, it's best if you let them talk first. Because I just talked about respect being a two-way street. Adolescents listen to adults when they believe the adults are listening to them. And it opens them up to listening to you if you let them speak first. I actually recommend this to teachers, by the way, in the school system. Teachers, because they're so busy and always behind, they come into meetings with parents and they go, okay, Mrs. So-and-so, this is what I wanted to tell you about your son, da-da-da-da-da-da. But especially if you're dealing with a child with a problem, you actually want to let the parent talk first so they feel like they're being respected. That's absolutely true of adolescents. And then the trick is this. And by the way, when they're talking, don't do all like, oh, really? I don't know how you could think that. Don't do all the little judgmental stuff and the body language. Like, just be straight with them. Let them talk until they say something you can agree with. And then agree with it. Because it totally disarms them. The moment you get to going, I absolutely agree with you, you'll see them go, you do? Really? And now they're going to listen to you. But we rarely set it up that way. And as your children get older, to make them feel like young adults, don't hesitate to talk over lunch somewhere or something like that. I know, even with my third eldest son, I have to tell you, you want to talk to him, bring him home an ice cap and a something to eat from Timmy's. If he's sitting there with an ice cap, he already knows he's not in trouble for anything. You can talk to him about it. You just have to set it up sometimes. No different than in the classroom, folks, where when parents came in to talk to me about, remember I had difficult children. When the parents came in, I always had a coffee pot. I could make them coffee. I could make them tea. I had cookies. And because there's something about food and just having a cup of coffee and a cookie that lets people just let their defenses down and talk openly and honestly. When you are talking to an adolescent, you want to focus on solving problems. In the school system, we talk about restitution, reconciliation, and restorative justice. Those are big words. What it means is that instead of talking about you're going to be grounded for a week, what you want to talk to them about is how to be accountable to say, okay, yes, I did that, I shouldn't have, bad idea, my bad. And then, how do you solve this so it's okay with everybody again? And how do you learn from it in the future? I know in the classroom I used to have up on the board painted on the board the words, make it right and learn how to do it better. That's what we talked about. Make it right to everybody and learn how to do it better in the future, and we are good. When you're talking about these things, then I recommend, as your children get older, you attach it to things they're looking forward to in life. So when you're talking about rules and respect for you and so on, here's the deal, folks. Like, they're 14, 2 years away from driving. Driving is the most rule-governed task in the world. The reason you obey the rules your parents set up at home is to show them that you will be ready for driving in 2 years. The reason you respect your parents at home is to show them that you will respect pedestrians, construction workers with their signs, police officers, school bus drivers, that everything that you do has a purpose in real life. What adolescents want is for you to express that purpose. You got to understand, from about the middle of grade 5 up, and how old are they then? 10 years old? From about the middle of grade 5, they become fascinated with the issue of fairness as it relates to everybody else, just not themselves. Because this is an interesting issue on which they don't hold up a mirror very well at all. So they don't see the fact that they themselves might be unfair, but they are very interested in everybody else being unfair and will complain to you when they think somebody else is not being fair. They just don't see what they're doing. What helps them understand rules and things like that at home is when you can say that your obeying rules at home tells me you're ready to take on some of your adult tasks, like driving a car. My third eldest son started to work at McDonald's. Things like being on time, doing jobs properly, being honest when you're dealing with cash and things like that. You can all relate them to the world of work. I often laugh. I think I said it the last time I was here, that my children, and if you're a good parent, your children will feel likewise, my children often thought that I was unreasonable. It's because they didn't understand the parenting job. And until they become parents themselves, they really don't understand why we do everything that we do. And so they thought I was unreasonable because I had ridiculous rules. One of my rules was, I require you to be polite to everyone, including rude people. Like, I just want you to be a polite person. If somebody else is being rude, don't let that change you. That's an issue we call character. That you can stay the kind of person you are under pressure. Because it's easy to be polite to polite people. No character in there. But can you keep being polite when the other person isn't? And that's a big issue. Well, they thought that was ridiculous. I remember my one son saying, Dad, if you watch the same TV shows we watch, you'd know that the cool thing these days is to come up with a snappy, in-your-face, oh yeah, right back at you comment to rude people. I said, oh, you saw that on TV. And our rule about TV? He goes, I know, the Las Vegas rule, what happens on TV stays on TV. I said, right. And the rude words I hear on my music player have to stay on my music player. That's right. That's right. And I said, I understand when you're watching some TV shows, somebody's rude, right back at you comment. Yeah, nice part of entertainment. In the real world, however, you be the kind of person I taught you to be. So then he goes and gets a job at McDonald's and comes back home laughing because they run you through a training program. And it's such a good training program. I don't know if any of you have ever worked for McDonald's. It's such a good training program. There are more and more states and some provinces that accept it as a college credit. how good it is. Comes back home laughing. Says, I shouldn't tell you this, Dad. You'll use it during your presentations. But he says, the manager at McDonald's told us the lesson we take tomorrow is the most difficult one any adolescent has to learn. It's how to be polite to rude customers. There you go. And they thought I was unreasonable just because I wouldn't have lower standards for my children than McDonald's has for serving fries. But that's very, very typical of how you have to make these connections for them because they don't see it. But you can help them with those connections. And there were numerous times when my children would break a rule or whatever, I didn't punish them. I said, why would you want to suggest to me that you might have to wait till you're 20 to go for driver's education? What? I go, every time you break a rule, you tell me you're not there yet. Because to drive a car, which is a 2-ton weapon that you intend to aim at other people, there are rules, and you have to learn to deal with that. And when you obey our house rules, you tell me you're ready for the world's rules outside of our house. That's the connection. Might as well make it now. So, those are the kinds of issues that we get into in terms of communicating with children, with adolescents. Rapport, your relationship with them makes a huge difference. Rapport changes their sense of being controlled into a sense of being guided. And so during the adolescent years, you want to gradually switch from being the boss of them when they're little, because you are, to being more of a coach, or I said to you before, like a driving instructor. I want you to listen to the driving instructor tone of voice, where they get in and they are firm, and they are fair, and they are consistent. If you want another example, think back to the favorite teacher you had in your own life as you went through school, and just be like that person. And I'm going to tell you there are differences with favorite teachers. Nobody's favorite teacher was a yeller. Nobody. Your favorite teacher used the same tone of voice as the driving instructor. Firm, not loud. And where punitive people who think there have to be consequences for everything that's done the wrong way, they think that you follow through on your consequences, which gives them a reputation for being punitive. But your favorite teacher followed through on his or her directions for doing things the right way. That gave your favorite teacher a reputation for meaning what they said. And in good discipline, that's the reputation you want, where you are firm and fair, but you follow through. So if you were to set up a rule in your house, for instance, where cell phones, once it's bedtime, cell phones are recharging in the kitchen as a way of making sure of preventing any problems with them after your children are supposed to be asleep. Because you know they'll push the limits and they'll be playing video games or something or talking to somebody on the phone. A very simple rule, all cell phones, including yours, once it's bedtime, they're on recharge in a certain place. The kitchen's probably a very good location for it. And what you do is you follow through on that direction, not on the now you've lost your cell phone for 6 months as a punishment, but rather each night where you go, cell phone please, thank you, where's your cell phone? And you follow through, create any signs or reminders or whatever about the procedure for doing it the right way instead of the warnings and threats about the consequences for doing it the wrong way. I hope that makes sense to you. On the handout that I left for you are some other ideas as well. Read down them. There was also a line, by the way. If you get the line about, remember I said about the 3 years younger, we talked in three as if they're 3 years younger. That ended up on a cut and paste when I was fixing the handout, ended up at the end of a paragraph where it wasn't meant to be. It's actually a point all by itself at the beginning. Just ignore that. There was a little computer error on my part. But I did remind people, in dealing with your children, we were all adolescents at one time, folks. Would you please remember what it was like and how you felt and how you wanted to be treated? And then remember that when you're treating children. And may I suggest, since children have a lot of energy, a comment was made to me, and you can see their energy. You can hear them out in the foyer there and things like that, and just running down the hall. When you're dealing with energy, folks, because I love it, comment was made to me when I started my teaching career, when a fellow I really respected looked at me as I was going, oh, these kids are really, I didn't have my own children. I went, oh, I'm tired. And he said, every day, if you're good at this, as a parent or as a teacher, you're going to be tired. Keep in the back of your mind the fact that the day will come in your life when you look at children and you will wish you had that much energy. That it's a good thing, and it might be an exhausting thing, but it's really a good thing, and learn how to take their energy and use it well. I always remember my parents saying, if you have that much energy, we have a job jar. And they didn't punish excess energy, they just made use of it. Said, good, if you got that much energy, we have things you can do with it. So a lot of it's about attitude, folks. I'd like to thank you, because I'm a couple of minutes past my time here, but thank you for allowing me to come and talk to you this evening. I'm coming back next Saturday. I don't actually know if those of you who want to come back, because I'm really open. That thing I talked to you about, that I referenced last year about positive discipline being very different from punitive discipline. If you want to talk more about that, because it's fascinating, we can do that. I'm going to tell you, whatever you went through as a child yourself established what is normal in the world around you. And like the food you eat, you will continue to do it yourself unless you give it some real thought. And like the food you eat, and you might not have had a good diet when you were young, but you can change that older if you think about it and work on it. But without any thought or any work, you'll just keep doing whatever you went through as a child. That's true for discipline. And because of that, people that went through a system that was heavy on consequences for doing things the wrong way will bring that right into their home environment. And even though it often doesn't work very well, they'll just keep doing it because it's the only approach they know. When we talk about the other one, it makes so much good sense. You'll go, oh, I get it. And we can talk about that, or we could talk about young children instead of adolescents. Whatever you like, we can talk about next week, and you can give me some feedback at the end. If you have questions, I won't take questions from the audience. I won't be able to hear them very well. Would you please feel free? I'm going to stay for a while. Would you just come up and talk to me? Because some of you, we've got people, typical church. We've got people sitting back from the front here. I won't attempt to hear. My hearing isn't all that great these days, so some age-related thing, I don't know. Just come up and talk to me afterwards. What I try to do when I go places, with the handout and just with talking, I try to talk some common sense and just give some insights into this. I'll leave you with one last one. In terms of how the brain changes throughout adolescence, researchers into brain chemistry and everything have said you have to be very careful not to overgeneralize and suggest it's the same for everybody, because it's not. Everybody is actually a little different. It takes a different amount of time, goes in a different order, and you have to be careful not to think it's the same for everybody. But they have found one thing that is very consistent, and I'll share that one thing because it's actually kind of humorous. It only applies to boys. In the male brain, as it's all being reworked, the part of the male brain here which brings good judgment to decision making, is almost always the last part of the male brain to reactivate after it's been reworked during adolescence. So everything else comes back online except the part of the male brain that provides good judgment. Research says that part of the male brain may not function well until as late as age 24, which means only the rental car companies had it right all along. The rental car companies have historically considered all males to be judgmentally impaired until age 25 and wouldn't let them touch a car. And I'm old enough to remember when, at least in this country and the United States, women could rent a car at age 21, and men had to wait until they were 25 because they couldn't be counted on to use good judgment. It's ironic that brain research into adolescent behavior says, that's it. Got it, right on. So there you go. So your boys may need to rely on your good judgment longer than your girls, and that's just a fact of life. So there you go, folks. I hope that makes sense. I try to leave everyone with enough things that something will connect, but I hope that makes good sense to you. More on the handout. Thank you so much for loving your children enough that you would come and share a Saturday evening with us. So thank you, everybody. Come and talk to me afterwards.
Well, thank you, Ron, for this piece of information. And thank you for the whole presentation. As Ron said, he will be with us next week. So we hope to see all of you back and even more people back that will try to, with all the feedback, what would you like to talk about next time? If you want to talk about younger kids, or if you want to talk about...
I'll do a bit of two things.
Okay.
Because people kept nodding.
Okay.
And the part about positive discipline, folks, you'll actually love, because think of where we are. When I say you have to teach children to behave appropriately, everybody in the room will agree with me, but that may not be what you went through when you were young yourself. So, hi. So, everybody will agree with me that you have to teach children to be respectful and responsible, courteous and considerate, and to solve any problems that come up. But teaching children to behave properly is not the way a lot of countries and school systems and cultures work. They actually focused on more consequences and punishments and takeaways. And just for your interest, in Canada and the States, you know, the school system adopted the military prison system as a way of dealing with children. That's why they use the word detention. And it's very interesting, the effects, and we can describe them more in terms of the fact they brought in all of the techniques from the military prison system in terms of dealing with things. And that was from over a century ago, where children were to be seen but not heard. And there's a whole history to this, but we can't get rid of it. And it's still there. And most people want a far more positive environment, but don't know how to change that. And they want a more positive environment at home too. So we can talk some about that, and I'll bring a handout on young children as well. And we'll have a great time. Just some more techniques for dealing with child behavior.
That sounds really interesting. So if any of you have any questions and would like to come up front to speak to Ron, we can do that after prayers. Just to let you know about the retreat, that on November 17, 18, and 19, as we've mentioned before, we're going to Niagara Falls. And the topic will be little people, big emotions, how to calm the storm instead of joining the chaos. So basically it's talking a lot about our emotions and our children's emotion and also our parenting styles. And Father Bishu and Father Boutros will email an assessment, a parenting assessment to each one of the parent. So please make sure to leave your email address, the mom and the dad, because an assessment will be mailed out to you. And just to know that the church will be funding this assessment. This assessment costs $45 per family, and the church will be paying for that assessment. So it's very important for you to benefit from the retreat is to fill out the assessment. The scores will be sent out to Father Bishoy. He will be printing it out. He will be putting it in an envelope. It's confidential, and he will be handing it out to the parents in the retreat. And at that time, the scores will be shared with each parent. And then if you want to discuss it further with the priest, we will have time to do that. And it will also be discussed during the sessions. And it's a very interesting program. It's called Enrich for Parents. And it kind of teaches us about your own parenting style. And if you have problems, where are your problems in terms of parenting and in terms of each other, that we learn about each other's parenting style. So it's a very good retreat. I think it's going to be beneficial to all of us as parents. We hope to see as many of you. There's still some rooms available. So please check with the servants outside in terms of availability and all the information regarding the retreat. And the package include water passes. And we're leaving some time in the schedule where you can actually take your kids to the water park. So there's a lot that will be very nice in terms of entertainment and as well as benefiting as a family in terms of what we're going to be learning with the priest. So I hope to see all of you there. If you have any questions about the retreat, we'll answer it outside.
Before your prayer, let me add one thing to that. On parenting style, I actually put it on my handout and didn't mention it because we didn't have time for everything tonight. But many times your parenting style will be different. Men are different than women in a lot of ways, and many people marry their opposite. The mother role is different than the father role in raising children, and you'll have differences. One of the things that's really valuable, I said, to teach a teenager is actually, it relates to that difference. Almost always when people disagree, they're both right. When they both have a valid point of view. And what happens in healthy families is people listen to each other to the opposite point of view and acknowledge it. What happens when things break down, and you'll see it all the time, is that somebody thinks that they have to win at this, and that the other person has to give in to their point of view instead of respecting their point of view. And so they argue until the other person says, fine, fine, and that starts going down not a very good road. When people listen to each other and appreciate that the other person has a different style and understand where they're coming from, maybe from their own childhood, maybe from their different role, mothers and fathers, works way better when there's respect for each other. So
thank you. Yeah, that's a very valid point. So, as I said, it's very crucial in terms of the assessment to be filled out. And as I said, the church will be paying for all families going on the trip. So it's beneficial for you if you're going on the trip to fill out this assessment. Okay, so let's stand up for prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you from the bottom of our heart for bringing us here together all today. We thank you for the love that you have put in our hearts for our children. We thank you for your gifts that you gave us. You blessed us with it, which are our children. We ask you, Lord, to bless them, to bless us, to help us in everything that we do. In the intercession of Saint Mary, Saint Athanasius, and all your saints, hear us when we say all together, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Amen.